Hi everyone, today for my proposal, I will be talking about the effectiveness of child life services for sibling suicide bereavement. Current research shows that in the United States, suicide is the second leading cause of death for children between the ages of 10 to 19 years old, with youth suicide rates continuing to increase within the past 15 years by 33%, making it very critical to examine new interventions that could potentially aid in providing suicide bereavement support to siblings, such as child life services, which is what we are talking about today. Why child life? Well, child life specialists are educated professionals on child development, play, therapeutic interventions, and grief and bereavement, with their education on end-of-life issues continuing to increase within the past 10 years. And because child life services have shown to significantly aid in minimizing child distress, providing comfort, and meeting the emotional needs of children in hospital settings, with their skills being transferable to other settings. The first research objective is to determine if child life services aid in minimizing depression and grief in children who have lost a sibling to suicide, with it being hypothesized that it is an effective intervention for reducing grief and depression. The second objective is to determine if time since loss impacts the effectiveness of child life services in minimizing grief and depression for children who have lost a sibling to suicide, with it being hypothesized that the earlier in one's loss child life services is administered, that greater reduction of grief and depression will occur. For this study, 60 participants will be recruited within 3 seasons of recruitment, and the criteria to participate in the study is that you must be between the ages of 10 to 17 years old and experience the loss of a sibling due to suicide. So as we see here, within each season of recruitment, we will be wanting to recruit 20 participants. And for our procedure, it will take place in the Austin Center for Grief and Loss in Austin, Texas, and participants will be evenly split into 2 groups based on their age. So as we see here, for example, we have our 20 participants and they will be evenly split into 2 groups of 10. And in the first group, we have the middle childhood group, so this will be participants 10 to 13 years old. And in the second group, we have the teen group, and this will be participants 14 to 17 years old. The reason they are being split up is that within their groups, they will participate in child life activities led by a certified child life specialist. Child life specialists guide and gear their activities based on the developmental age of a child. So as we see here on this chart, the types of play activities that they will participate in slightly differ based on their developmental needs. However, every participant will participate in legacy building, storytelling, coping strategies, and again, just different types of play based on their developmental age. Sessions will be 1 hour weekly, and they will take place for 6 weeks for a total of 6 sessions, and each participant will complete a pre- and post-test to measure their grief and depression. To measure grief, the ICG will be used as a pre- and post-test, so on the first day of services and on the very last day of services. And to measure depression, the CSD will be used as a pre- and post-test, again on the first day of services and on the last day of services. To test our hypothesis 1, we will be collecting the composite score of the ICG at pre- and post-test, and this will be done by summing up all 19 questions of the ICG. We will also be collecting the composite score of the CESD at pre- and post-test, and this will be done by summing up all 20 questions of the CESD. We will also be conducting a paired samples t-test to look at the differences at pre- and post-test for the CESD, and a paired samples t-test to compare differences at pre- and post-test for the ICG. To test our hypothesis 2, we will be conducting 2 different Pearson correlation tests to look at the relationship between time of loss in months and the different score of the CESD and the different score of the ICG. If we look here, how a different score will be collected is that we will be grabbing the pre-test composite scores, we will be subtracting that from the post-test composite scores, and this will equal a different score. And the exact same approach will be used to get a different score for the ICG and the different score of the CESD. For our expected results, for our hypothesis 1, we are expecting to see a reduction of depression and grief for our post-test. If we see here in figure 1, the dark blue bars represent our average pre-test results and the light blue bars represent our average post-test results, and we see a reduction of depression and we see a reduction of grief at post-test. For our hypothesis 2, we are expecting a negative correlation between time since loss and the different score of the CESD, so depression, and a negative correlation between time since loss and the different score of the ICG. If we look over here for figure 2, this is an example of what we expect to see between correlation of time and the CESD difference score. If we look here, this shows that earlier intervention leads to a greater difference score, so a greater reduction in depression. And that is what we expect for our findings. So thank you very much for listening to this presentation.